In the name of Her Majesty the Queen, I hereby declare court in session. We are sitting today for the public trial of Professor Albert Harebrain. I now call the counsels for the prosecution and defense. The prosecution is ready. The defense is ready, my lord. I'm 6 months out of practice, and what's more, I'm without Sasato-san today. Even her ghost has abandoned me. Ugh, is it just my imagination, or does the air feel more oppressive than usual? So, I must say I recollect the victims of this case all too well. Mr. Odie Asman. Mr. Asman was well known as a financier, though that was merely a front for his diverse criminal activities. It was only a month ago the man appeared in court prosecuted by you, Von Zykes. But the jury unanimously found him not guilty. Because every member of the jury had been bribed, by the sound of it. These powerful London criminals are prepared to go to extreme lengths to keep their freedom. But 2 days ago, on the 21st of October, Asman met his end. The work of the Reaper, was it? If that is how your lordship would describe divine retribution. But the fact remains that Mr. Asman's death was a direct result of the actions of the accused, Professor Harebrain. Very well, then. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you have been selected at random. Are the 6 of you ready? I am most gratified to have been selected to carry out this important civic duty. To have a man's fate in the palm of one's hand. Oh gosh, oh golly, it sends shivers down my spine. I don't know where to start with that one. Science experiments, magic, conjuring tricks, courtroom trials, all are nothing more than performances. Any spurious scholar that defies the reputation of science deserves to hang. What the fuck are you? We have to listen to what's said on both sides, the fence, then settle on one. That's it, isn't it? Oh, okay, I was like, damn, I don't actually recognize any of them, and then Juror 6 came in. Wasn't like this in my day, wasn't like this at all. That's the police killer Automol lookalike again, and he's exhausted as ever, it seems. Now, I'm sure you're all aware, the incident we are here to judge tragically took place at the Great Exhibition shortly after its opening. Though the death toll could have been far worse, with the exception of the victim, no one was killed. Nevertheless, the dream of the science being exhibited rapidly turned into a nightmare for the spectators. A tragic turn of events, and as such the eyes of London, no, the whole world will be on this trial. It is our duty to reach a swift and just conclusion. So, your opening statement, please, Von Zykes. At the heart of this incident is technology never before demonstrated anywhere in the world. One of science's latest developments, I take it. The government is keen to capitalize on the Great Exhibition. The technology being demonstrated by the accused was described as super high voltage instantaneous kinesis. Good lord, that sounds important. It's designed to disassemble human beings using extremely high voltage electricity and beam them instantly to another location where they are subsequently reassembled. Is such a thing even within the realms of possibility? Well, I don't believe it, that's for sure. Disassembling people with electricity, my goodness, how shocking. Ha! The whole idea is absurd. The hypothesis would never stand up to scrutiny. Sir, I believe you are a fellow of the Royal Society, are you not? An expert in your field? I am, and my word on the matter can be considered final. Instantaneous kinesis is poppycock. So this expert and Sholmes are in agreement. What is the prosecution's view? The prosecution would assert that the accused instantaneous kinesis demonstration was a success. What? What rot? Order! The professor's hypothesis is currently under investigation by the British government. It is deemed to have merit. A substantial research grant would be made available. The accused made use of the invention built on his new hypothesis to take Mr. Asmund's life, in order to be the sole benefactor of the grant. But... This disastrous demonstration was no accident. It was carefully designed from the outset to end the life of the victim. Thank you, Von Zykes. The prosecution's stance is clear. But you will now bring forth witnesses to substantiate your claims. Gladly, my lord. Bailiff, show the first witnesses to the stand. Delightful. Witnesses, state your names and occupations for the court. Yes, sir. Tobias Gregson, Detective Inspector at Scotland Yard's Homicide Division. I was on duty at the demonstration on the day in question and in charge of the following investigation. I see. Impressive.
Albert Herbrand is a scientist.
You were born in England, but have been carrying out research in Germany in recent years, correct?
Yes, that's right. After graduating from university here in Britain, I went to work in Germany and made an amazing discovery, which is what brought me back. I had to demonstrate my incredible hypothesis.
What you demonstrated was incredible, all right? An incredible explosion.
But the science was a success. The instantaneous kinesis worked. Everyone saw it. They must have done. Yes, it was a terrible accident, but the demonstration of my hypothesis was a success.
Well, that much is undeniable, as is shown in this photograph taken by the forensic investigation team. This was taken inside the Crystal Tower, I take it, the centerpiece of the exhibition. That's right, my lord. Seems the victim rammed straight into it. I see. Well, submit the photograph as evidence. Let's take a gander at that first, see if anything is obviously out of place. Not really seeing anything. As the court said, the victim of the incident was Mr. Odie Asmund. There had been a number of allegations made against the man, putting aside them for the time being. He was the man who financed the research for the experiment and the demonstration itself. I see. So to summarize, the defendant is accused of taking the man's life who funded his work. Would that be correct? Exactly. But couldn't it be that the explosion was caused by some malfunction in the apparatus?
That's right. That must be it. My splendid machine. My poor splendid machine.
You saw it yesterday, didn't you? We can't even examine the wreckage thanks to the special dispensation for scientific equipment.
What? The wreckage? The wreckage?
But that being the case, how can the facts be established? How can it possibly be determined whether this was a deliberate or malicious act? Extremely simply, my lord. I beg your pardon? Isn't that right, witness?
What? Sorry, me?
No, your neighbor. Yes, sir, it was murder. Plain and simple. Anyone could state that with complete certainty. What? How can they think that? Thank you, Inspector. We should proceed to formal testimony. You will explain to the court on what grounds you claim this experiment to have been a front.
The corpse that went crashing through the Crystal Tower had a broken neck.
I made a minor miscalculation in the angle of the beam projection, that's all. That was my mistake.
But the post-mortem examination revealed another injury, a fatal wound. There was a liaison Lesion? I don't fucking know. In his chest, where he'd clearly been stabbed by something sharp right in the arm. So, the victim was killed before he went anywhere, and this fella's the only one who could have done it. How does the waxwork come into this, though? An extraordinary business. In addition to suffering a broken neck, the victim was stabbed in the heart. Information I would have liked to have heard from someone other than the judge. The coroner says death would have been all but instant from a wound like that. You could say, in fact, that the victim was killed twice by the accused. That's not how this works, though the rare double murder would be a good conviction to get, I suppose.
No, that couldn't be further from the truth.
I have here the experiment plan document that was submitted to the security team. The victim stood himself inside something called the bird cage, ready to be beamed instantly to the second level of the Crystal Tower, about 25 yards away. The experiment did not go according to plan, however. As the machine was put into operation, there was a large explosion. The blast caused the beam transmitter to point higher than intended. Accordingly, the kinesis resulted in the birdcage materializing in mid-air, from where it subsequently fell, crashing through the glass of the Crystal Tower's large round window. But wasn't it broken on the side, not the top? My word, one assumes the victim's neck was broken upon impact with the tower, then.
I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for this to happen. The machine was just too powerful. But honestly, really, I swear, it was just an accident, a terrible accident.
Unfortunately, that can't save you. No, not considering the sharp, murder weapon that pierced the victim's arm.
Murder weapon? What are you saying?
This is the autopsy report submitted by the coroner. The prosecution would like it entered into the court record. Your request is granted, counsel. I would like to peruse the documentation.
I was there in person, you know. I saw the whole ludicrous performance.
It's been 2 days since I played the game. I've forgotten what everybody sounds like. Nationality, British, male, time of death, around 2:20 p.m. Hemorrhage of a wound to the chest that pierced the heart, inflicted by a sharp implement, a broken vertebrae, most likely resulting from impact after a sudden fall from considerable height.
And the only other person on the stage was with Mr. Osborn was that disgraceful excuse for a scientist.
Then really, by all accounts, it must have been him. Oh, thank goodness we found this crossbow.
Hard to think otherwise, really.
Well, counsel for the defense, proceed with the cross-examination. We gotta go straight for the stab to the heart. Do we present the crossbow immediately, or do we press him? We probably press him just to be safe. The defense knew nothing of this crucial information. The prosecution received this report from the forensic investigation team only this morning. That was the first we knew of it as well. I can only apologize for the impossibility of informing the defense. Sarcastic and insincere thanks. So what was the nature of this sharp object? Among the accused tools that were in use at the demonstration, one is of particular interest. This. Ah, yes, that would appear to be some kind of screwdriver.
There he is. My trusty little companion, Andrew.
Andrew, of course.
Do you know each other already? He's one of my dear friends, like all my tools. I've named them all, you know. We're one big happy family. Andrew is my flathead screwdriver, of course. His brother, Michael, is a crosshead.
Well, it would appear that your beloved Andrew has a red stain on his shank. Ah, that isn't... It's blood, beyond all reasonable doubt. No. And that's not all. The long, sharp shape of her Andrew fellow is completely consistent with the victim's wound.
What?
Order, order. The court will enter this friend of the defendant into evidence. So one of Professor Harebrain's tools is the murder weapon. Great. That's okay. We've just got to prove you could put it in a fucking crossbow. Let's examine it first. This is blood, Mr. Osmond's blood, no doubt. This is the problem with looking at murder weapons. I see. I've seen this unusually shaped handle before. It's the same screwdriver that was lodged in the grill of the Kinesis machine, which would be important information. I should definitely make note of it. Alright. So the victim was killed before he went anywhere, and this fellow's the only one who could have done it. I'm slamming the crossbow down. Really? Really? Oh, come on. Fine, I'll press on it instead. What grounds do you have for saying that?
Huh, do you really need to ask? There were only 2 people on that public performance stage in front of the whole crowd.
The victim, Mr. Odie Osmond, and the accused, Professor Mr. Harebrain. And we know for certain that before the experiment, the victim was alive.
That's right, I saw him with my own eyes.
Furthermore, following the explosion and kinesis, nobody went anywhere near the body.
In other words, only someone else on stage could have possibly done it.
I'm gonna be so fucking mad if they still use the crossbow. Professor Harebrain, do you have something that may be relevant here? Professor?
Sorry. I was just calculating the optimum coefficient of electrolysis to separate molecules in the human body.
And the witness stand is the place for that. He seemed as though you might have something to say, about Inspector Gregson's last remark.
Yes, that's right, of course. He just said that nobody else could have done it, didn't he?
Yeah, that's right. Nobody else could have stabbed the victim, eh?
I don't know, but there's no way that I could have possibly stabbed Mr. Osmond, as you say.
Eh? Explain, please. Somebody would have surely seen it.
Of course, this cold-blooded policeman may not be aware, I suppose, but humans are warm-blooded mammals with blood running continuously through their veins.
I had heard.
Then surely you see, if I'd plunged something the size of Andrew into the man's chest, the whole stage would have been a bloodbath, no, a blood swimming pool.
Ah.
But thousands of Londoners were watching me at the time, and yet not one of them claims to have seen a swimming pool of blood.
Well, no, I suppose not.
You see, not one.
True, I didn't see anything like that. Well done, Professor. That was a great counter-argument. Slam the crossbow down, also. Order. Pray forgive the discourtesy if I savor a drop from my hallowed chalice to accompany my old friend's abducing. Here's to you, Albert.
Oh, you're too kind, Barrack, but I'm really not a patch on you.
No, you're not.
No?
You've neglected to mention one crucial possibility.
I have.
A particular situation in which very little bleeding would result from a stab wound.
Oh, of course.
Inspector, enlighten the court, please.
Yes, sir.
Where are they going with this? Very well, you will amend your testimony.
The weapon the victim was stabbed with must have been left in his body whilst he was beamed through the air.
Whilst he was beamed through the air. Alright, well, we can slam the screwdriver down for that one, right? Poking through the grill.
Objection!
You say that while the weapon remains in the body, there's very little bleeding. Is that unequivocal?
Look, there was no blood on the experiment stage, even though that's where the fellow was stabbed. The only explanation is if the screwdriver was still in his body, stopping any heavy bleeding.
It's common medical knowledge, my learned friend, even on your side of the world. Yes, but about the screwdriver. The thing is, we actually saw it at the scene ourselves, on the experiment stage.
What?
It was on the floor by the wreckage of the machine, poking through a metal grill. I went to pick it up, but the detective here stopped me. Isn't that right, Inspector Gregson?
Now you come to mention it, yes.
Inspector, are we to understand you permitted the defense counsel to investigate? That you contravened the Special Dispensations Scientific Equipment Act?
No, not at all. I wouldn't do that. I just let him look, nothing more. I was very clear he wasn't to touch a thing.
Yes, that's true. The screwdriver was in plain sight on the stage. But it shouldn't have been, should it?
What are you getting at?
If this tool had still been in the victim's body when the victim was beamed away by the machine, then it shouldn't have still been on the stage. That's right. It should have been beamed across to the Crystal Tower with Mr. Asman. And been found still lodged in the victim's chest. I'm still mad we haven't shown the fucking crossbow. Order, how do you explain this, Inspector?
I don't,
It looks as though everything the victim had on his person moved with him when he was beamed. If the screwdriver was still in his chest when the instantaneous kinesis occurred, obviously that should have been beamed to the destination as well. This is a strange situation. Even though people are saying this instantaneous kinesis is a scientific impossibility, we're still basing arguments on the assumption that it actually did take place. Alright, time to tighten the screws. My lord, if the prosecution is unable to explain this inconsistency in its argument, we can only conclude that the testimony given in support cannot be relied upon. Lord Von Zykes is stumped. Don't you fucking do this. Don't you dare say something to the effect of metal doesn't get teleported.
Yes, I knew it. It bears out. The equations hold. Mr. Naruhodo, don't worry.
I'm very worried. About what?
Without delving into the details, there is no inconsistency.
I hate you so much. What?
Even if Andrew had been lodged in Asman's chest, my trusty tool wouldn't have moved, and
I fucking knew he was gonna say it.
Andrew remaining on the stage is consistent with my calculations.
What? It would seem your illusions have been shattered. Clearly, we should hear the accused's explanation. Or should I say, this brilliant scientist's explanation? Just when I'd found an inconsistency. Scientists. Very well, the defendant will testify again. Provide us with scientific explanation.
In the name of Apollo, I will, my lord.
Fucking nerds.
To be clear, I'm still at the stage of gathering data in my research. My hypothesis states the kinesis cannot transport metal, though, hence the metal weapon would have stayed put. In other words, the point just raised by Naruhodo isn't an inconsistency at all. And Mr. Asman was the patron of my research. Without him, my work wouldn't have been possible. Now I have a duty to protect the incredible machine that we built together.
So, the thrust of your testimony, Professor, is
That based upon his hypothesis, metal objects cannot be moved by this method of instantaneous kinesis.
In other words,
Since the screwdriver is made of metal, even if it remained lodged in the victim's chest, its subsequent discovery on the stage, despite the victim being found elsewhere, is not an inconsistency.
and therefore,
Therefore, Professor Albert Harebrain could still have been the killer.
My great hypothesis holds. We had to make the cage used to contain the subject from wood for that very reason.
I was not addressing you, witness. Professor Harebrain,
Yes,
whose side are you on?
I don't take sides, Mr. Naruhodo. No. My only interest lies in upholding my hypothesis. I'm a scientist, after all.
Is he working for us or against us? It's very hard to tell.
Let's see how you cross-examine this testimony, my Nipponese friend.
Yes, fire away.
Well, we know that he didn't actually get teleported. So, can we prove that he had some metal go with him, quote unquote? These look pretty metal. Should these have not stayed behind? Hold it! And yet, your retort to my argument wasn't lacking in any confidence.
No scientist can find the truth without first finding self-belief. Those were the words of a certain scientist I hold in very high esteem.
But you realize that disproving my argument puts you in a precarious position, don't you?
No scientist should strive to protect himself more than he strives to protect the truth. More words of the same great scientist, you know.
Like, here's the thing. I get that and all, like, being honest, even if it's not necessarily helpful to you. But, like, you know you didn't kill him. You know you didn't stab him. And you want to protect your machine from being examined, even in the interests of honesty. This doesn't make any sense given your prior position on this matter. But whatever, you know, that's fine. Be a huge fucking nerd about it.
I'm afraid I couldn't tell you. But as soon as I remember the magnificent genius's name, you'll be the first to know.
It might be worth keeping the names of your idols in mind.
You're wasting your breath, my learned friend. This scatterbrain even forgets my name at times.
So Lord Von Zykes really did have a friend once, but I didn't notice hell freezing over. Damn, dude, you don't have to do him like that. I think he's a fine man, aside from his blatant racism. Which, you know, is not exactly a glowing character trait. Your hypothesis states it, so this isn't proven then?
No, of course not. It's merely a hypothesis, but a good one, based upon thousands of calculations. But it is widely known that metals can't be decomposed by electrolysis. Yes, of course, so I am right. My hypothesis is clearly correct.
What is it about incriminating himself that makes this man so happy?
It's the whole reason the birdcage is made of wood.
Sorry, the birdcage? We already know what the birdcage is.
That's what I call the C. obtusa cage, in which Mr. Asman was placed for the kinesis.
The jail cell in which the victim was detained. It did indeed seem to be of a timber of some sort. I'll thank you not to refer to it as an instrument of incarceration, your lordship.
In short, any weapon lodged in the victim when he was beamed away by instantaneous kinesis would have been left behind on the stage as it was made of metal, correct?
This is really fucking weird. Like, obviously we'll find something to make it all make sense, but, like, it's really fucking weird. Like, the wax doll was involved, because he obviously didn't actually get teleported anywhere. So a wax doll was somehow involved. The murder weapon was on the stage, not inside him. Like, we really so he probably didn't actually get shot by the crossbow, did he? The crossbow, well, no. He got it, fuck, it's even weirder though. He got into the machine. So what happened exactly? Like, on stage, he got in the machine, and somewhere in that period, he was switched with a wax doll, killed, and taken to the actual spot? What the fuck happened? Man, this is a fucking weird one, dude.
But the ultimate conclusion, then, is that the defendant alone had the opportunity to inflict this fatal injury on the victim, is it not?
Ah, indeed, sir. Someone beam me out of this nightmare.
In other words, the point just raised by Mr. Naruhodo isn't an inconsistency at all.
You seem to be pleased by that.
Yes, another example of my hypothesis holding true. But I sense some sarcasm, Mr. Naruhodo. Are you not pleased?
No.
I knew it. At the end of the day, I'm the one responsible for Mr. Asman losing his life. The advancement of science is no excuse, I know that.
No, you're quite right. Tell the court, do you have a close relationship with Mr. Asman?
Well, no, not really. I mean, I'd only met him two or three times. And we only ever discussed my hypothesis in the project and the research grant. Of course. Mr. Asman was the patron of my research. Without him, my work wouldn't have been possible.
How did you come to know Mr. Asman in the first place?
A year ago now, a small provincial science journal published a paper about my work. Quite literally, as you can see.
That's a scientific journal? Good gracious, I should need new spectacles.
I might have had an extraordinary hypothesis and great promise, but at the time I had no money. I had to eat tiny little meals at a tiny little cafe and drink watered-down water out of a tiny little glass.
Watered-down water.
But Mr. Asman read the paper and came to visit me at my tiny little laboratory.
And offered you money to help fund your work?
Exactly, that's exactly what happened. I handled the theoretical side of things, and Mr. Asman provided me with an engineer for the practical. And the three of us produced that fantastic machine together.
The machine that you brought to the Great Exhibition to demonstrate?
We had to apply for the government for some sort of inspection to be allowed to exhibit, I think. I didn't understand all that side of things. Mr. Admin took care of it all. He was a wonderful man, really. I owe him everything. Now I have a duty to protect the incredible machine.
When you say you built the machine together, does that mean you were involved in its construction?
Yes. Well, not exactly. I'm not good with the practical side of machines myself, so the physical construction was done by an engineer.
Little remains of your creation now, though, following the explosion. Repair will no doubt be impossible.
Yes, I realize that, but still. If someone were to gather all the broken parts, they could discover the secret of my hypothesis. But Mr. Asman and I toiled over that machine for so long, we put our hearts and souls into it. I have to protect our work. So what's left of the machine must be kept safe. That's only fair, because what happened was an accident.
That's the extent of his testimony, then. Thank goodness for that. I don't want him doing any more damage. He's already basically proven he could have been the culprit, but it seems as though all he really cares about is defending his hypothesis. Still, I wonder, what if his hypothesis is fundamentally flawed? That's the angle I want to approach this from, yes. So, I think we present the photo, and point out the glasses, right? Like, these look pretty metal to me, so logically they should have gotten left behind. This also sort of looks metal to me, you know? Everything else is, of course, wood. Do we present it here, though? No. We put it here, right? Can't transport metal, but here's metal. Look, behold.
Objection!
Did it. Professor Harebrain, you say that according to your hypothesis, nothing made of metal can be aimed by instantaneous kinesis using the machine you made.
Yes, that's right. Spot on. Exactly correct.
In that case, I'd like you to have a look at this photograph that was taken at the scene. In particular, I'd like you to pay attention to the victim's face. You can clearly see that Osman is wearing a pair of spectacles with a metal rim.
What? Metal? No, metal can't. That's not... metal? No.
We've already established that the proposed murder weapon, the screwdriver, was found on the stage. However, if your hypothesis correctly predicted that the outcome, it should have also predicted that the metal-rimmed spectacles would have been found in the same place.
My hypothesis.
Professor Harebrain, this isn't easy for me to say, but your hypothesis is clearly flawed.
Yeah.
Order. Counsel, what is the implication of this? If, on the day in question, the alleged instantaneous kinesis never actually took place, then it's entirely possible the victim was killed somewhere other than on the stage. And in that case, someone other than the defendant could have been the culprit.
But my hypothesis is sound. I proved it that day. The experiment was a success. The experiment was proof of all my work.
If I could say something here, in my capacity as a fellow of the Royal Society.
Yes, juror number 4, go ahead.
As a man of science, there's one thing I simply cannot abide. And that's a fraud who pretends to be a fellow man of science.
What? Wait, great Scott, are you suggesting my science is suspect?
It's just been disproved, hasn't it, in front of all of us? In other words, the whole demonstration was a complete nonsense from start to finish. Believe me, my fellow jurors, when I tell you that this man is a heel, a bounder, and a fraud.
A bounder? Fuck, that's a brutal one.
I say the wreckage of that machine should be stripped down and thoroughly examined.
No, never. That machine is the essence of my hypothesis. It's protected by the special dispensation for scientific equipment.
What the devil is all that blasted act about, eh? Who made up such a daft rule?
I don't like the way this seems to be going. What's the best way for me to help the professor? Raise an objection? What are we going to object about? I mean, I'll object, but I'm not really sure where we're going to go with it.
Objection!
Professor Harebrain has yet to perfect his invention. That would seem to be the case, yes. But even so what? Going to such trouble and expense to create a fake machine to display in public, he would have absolutely no reason to do such a thing. He had an obvious reason to do exactly that. For the research grant money.
If the government was foolish enough to have deemed the man's ridiculous notion plausible, he and his conspirators would have received a handsome sum indeed.
Conspirators?
What would be the value of such a grant? £10?
You're an order of magnitude out, madam. £500. A year!
Oh,
wait.
You could live in a hansom on that for that much years.
The Society has noticed an increase in bogus public demonstrations in the field of science recently, and plenty of scientists arguing with each other to get the largest slice of the funding cake. People's greed is plenty motive enough for murder, I assure you.
No. I haven't deceived anyone, least of all the government. My hypothesis is sound, the science is sound. Please, you must believe me.
No matter how unbelievable this hypothesis may seem to you, ladies and gentlemen, the fact remains the victim was transported instantly to the Crystal Tower. Which means that the experiment was a success.
Barak.
And therefore, the only person who could have possibly committed this murder is the accused.
Barak.
Where is this heading?
My lord, if I may.
Yes, Lord Von Zykes?
The prosecution would like to summon new witnesses to the stand.
New witnesses? What would the nature of their involvement be?
They were spectators of the demonstration of the exhibition, who were accompanying special seats.
Eyewitnesses?
Very well, the court grants the prosecution's request. I should very much like to hear from eyewitnesses.
The prosecution's stance is clear. This experiment was no pastiche. The accused killed the financier victim there on the public stage before the very eyes of the spectators. Now, my learned friend.
Oh, yes?
It's time for you to make your own stance clear.
There's clearly a flaw in the professor's hypothesis, I can see that. But where does that leave me?
We shall take a short recess now, during which time the prosecution will prepare its witnesses.
Why are we doing that for these witnesses? We don't do that usually, unless they have to be collected, you know?
As you wish, my lord.
Good. In that case, court is adjourned for 20 minutes.
We have never done this. Whatever. I guess it's just to break for ads. Yeah, you know.